Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit tre.radio.
The book show on TRE is sponsored by CK La Quinta, a residency care home for the elderly like no other in Marbella. Find out more at cklaquinta.com.
The Book Show, presented by Hannah Murray.
Good afternoon. Welcome to today's book show. As always, we start by looking at the bestseller lists on amazon.co.uk and the Sunday Times, the oldest and most influential book sales chart in the UK. There's some new entries this week. Then we'll be catching up with Guy Lloyd, the international sales manager of Penguin Random House. He joins us once a month to talk all things books. This month, we examine why using AI for submitting your book to an agent is not a good idea and how AI can get your company into trouble. We also talk about 3 new books coming out from Bonnie Garmus, Dame Judi Dench and Iain Rankin. We're chatting to Carol Reid, a British English language training expert and educational consultant. Her book, Something is Stuck in My Tummy, is for children aged 4 to 8 and tells the story of Shelley the shark. The book has a powerful message about protecting our environment. And we're joined by Erik S. Meyers. He's an award-winning author and communications professional. Death for Sale is the 3rd book in the beloved Sally Witherspoon series. Sally is a local biker bar owner and part-time investigator. That's just the first hour. In the second hour, we're chatting to D.N. Potter, Eleanor Lipman and Eva Le Bon.
The Book Show, presented by Hannah Murray.
To this week's book show. As always, we look at the Sunday Times bestseller list first of all, the oldest and most influential book sales chart in the UK. This is the one that every author wants to be on, and it's the most accurate estimation of book sales in the country. Lena Dunham's memoir, Fame Sick, debuts at number 1 in general hardbacks. It's the second title by the creator of HBO show Girls to feature in the charts, after Not That Kind of Girl in 2014, which spent 13 weeks in the charts. So let's have a look. General hardbacks, there are 3 new entries, including that one at number 1, Fame Sick by Lena Dunham, the writer and actress on her rise to fame, relationships and struggle with illness. Number 2 is a new entry called Start With Yourself by Emma Greed. The entrepreneur outlines her framework for building the life you really want. Number 3 is the other new entry, Talking Classics by Mary Beard, the surprising parallels between the art and culture of the ancient world and today. Number 4 is London Falling by Patrick Radden Keefe. Number 5, Elizabeth II by Robert Hardman. Number 6, The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. Number 7 is Always Remember by Charlie Mackesy. Number 8, Betrayal by Tom Bauer. Number 9, Enough Said by Alan Bennett. And number 10 is Rasputin by Anthony Beevor. Looking at fiction hardbacks, there are 6 new entries this week, including number 1, Starside by Alex Astor. An orphan with a powerful sword enters a quest for valuable magic. Number 2, a new entry called The Rebel Witch by Kristen Cicerelli. On the Run, Rune seeks an unlikely ally. This is a sequel to The Crimson Moth. Number 3 is Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke. Number 4, Hope Rises by David Baldacci. Number 5, a new entry called Rights of the Starling by Devney Perry. A princess journeys across a cursed realm, a sequel to Shield of Sparrows. Number 6, a new entry called Transcription by Ben Lerner. A writer arrives at an interview with his mentor without a digital recording device. Number 7, The Ending Writes Itself by Evelyn Clark. Number 8, another new entry, My Year in Paris with Gertrude Stein by Deborah Levy. A journey through Paris to understand the life of the avant-garde American poet. Number 9 this week is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. And number 10, the final new entry, The Faith of Beasts by James S.A. Corey. A plan to destroy the Carrick's Empire forms, a sequel to The Mercy of Gods. Moving on to Amazon.co.uk, the top 10 bestsellers for this week. At number 1 is The Names by Florence Knapp. Number 2, Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke. Number 3, The Seriously Epic Holiday of Lottie Brooks, book 9 in the series by Katie Kirby. Number 4 is The Nightingale by Kristin Hanna. Number 5, Barbecue, Easy Grilling, Big Flavour by Jamie Oliver. Number 6 is The Women by Kristin Hanna. Number 7, The Impossible Fortune by Richard Osman. Number 8 is Cozy Corner by Coco Wyo. Number 9, London Falling by Patrick Radden Keefe. And number 10 is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I think that's the first time I haven't said Frida McFadden in a long time.
The Book Programme. Presented by Hannah Murray.
You're listening to Hannah Murray on The Book Show.
Joining us on the line now is Guy Lloyd. He's the International Sales Manager for Penguin Random House and joins us once a month to talk all things books. How are you, Guy?
Very well indeed, Hannah. Not quite fresh back from the London Book Fair, but yes, did one recently, another one.
Oh, how did it go?
It was pretty good. It's always busy. It's always noisy. It's always quite nice weather as well. And for anyone who's done a trade fair in Olympia, you'll know it's a bit of a glass house. So if it's anything over about 10 degrees, you start to warm up a bit. The disappointment was because of the current madness going on in the Middle East. A lot of customers couldn't come. None of my customers from Israel. I had a colleague who does the rest of the Middle East. None of his customers would come. And it affected us in different ways. We had people who were coming from the Far East and Australia who couldn't, of course, connect via the Middle East, which is normally the way they do it.
Yeah.
And the fairs have rocketed as well. So a few of them weren't able to come. But there was still enough to make it interesting. So, and it's always good to see people face to face.
Yeah, nice. And a lot of people, there's a lot of talk, obviously, in so many different industries about AI and the pros and the cons, and definitely in the book industry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it came out recently. I read an interesting story about literary agents. And literary agents are the gateway to all the major publishers. So never send a submission directly to a publisher. Always look for an agent first. And they are, quite a lot of them now are adding changes to their submission guidelines, warning authors not to use AI either in their submissions or covering letters. And they're finding it's happening more and more. And one in particular called Green and Heaton said, in many cases, we are able to detect widespread use of AI tools. Even what might seem to you to be harmless and helpful AI editing tools can really flatten your writing. And I thought, well, picture the scene at a literary agent, because I know it goes on at publishers as well. At any one time, there's a huge pile of either physical manuscripts or unopened emails, all of which are potential submissions. And they should have a covering letter. And if all the letters say the same thing, they're not even going to read your manuscript. And in fact, some have put out statements saying as much, which then led me to think, what should be in a submission? And because a lot of people have asked me in the past, and I would say definitely don't just send the manuscript and nothing else. Because in general, if your book is 60 to 120,000 words, no one is going to start ploughing through it without knowing in advance something of what it's about. So that's why you need a covering letter. And that needs some research about who you think your reader is. Because every acquisition meeting I've sat in for 35 years and more has just boiled down to the single question, who's going to buy it? And it's the same for agents. So in your covering letter, by all means, have a paragraph or two about the content, add a little bit about yourself and your motivation for writing it. But the letter really should talk mainly about who's going to buy your book and what its place in the market is. And if you don't get this bit right, then the agent isn't going to read the manuscript. So a few do's and don'ts. be very specific when placing your book in the market. Think about your audience. Think about how old they are. Are they more likely to be men or women? That's not sexist. It is just market research. Women tend to buy more romance. Men tend to read more military history. It's kind of the way of the world. What else might they read? Comparing your manuscript to previous successful books in your genre is always a good idea. But never, ever, ever write for anyone who loves a good book or likes to read, or the kiss of death phrase is for the general reader. If you put that, it'll go in the bin or they'll delete your email. If it sounds harsh, this is a commercial business. Literary agents need to sell books and so publishers.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I've spoken to many, many authors over the years and I've asked them that question. Who do you think would read your book, or who do you think the book appeals to? Who have you written it for? A variation of those types of questions. And very often they say, well, I think it would appeal to anyone. And they give a really broad answer. And I think sometimes authors are afraid of maybe pigeonholing themselves and saying, oh, this is mainly for women who are trying to get pregnant, or, you know what I mean? Being really specific. They wrote it when they were going through an IVF journey, so they know that other women who are going through the same journey will be able to relate to it. And they think, God, that must be such a small market. I'm sure fathers would enjoy it as well. And I'm sure, they try and make it as broad as possible to make it sound more appealing. So is that the wrong, that you're obviously saying that's the wrong thing to do?
Well, indeed. And they have the luxury, because they're on your program, they are already authors. Their books have already been published. So they're not in that step of having to convince the gatekeepers of getting their book published, who are the publishers and the literary agents. And many people forget that, potential writers. It's up to you as a writer to think about the market. Don't leave that to the agent or the publisher, or you won't get past first base. And certainly don't use AI in your submission. Now, there may be people out there thinking, oh, he's a crusty old man who's worked in traditional publishing in a certain way for years. I'm not anti-AI. I think it is a phenomenal tool. It will change our lives in many, many wonderful ways. And very famous writers are using it now. I've heard them interviewed. They use it for research, but it doesn't and can't write their books. And I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
So don't use AI and think about your market.
No, good advice. And you're also saying that how AI can get your company into trouble.
Well, yes. And this has cropped up recently in the case of a company called Grammarly. And Grammarly is part of a company offering AI services. They used to be called Superhuman. And they rebranded last year from Superhuman to Grammarly. And what they do is offer AI tools for copy editing and proofreading, for writing emails. So it's a combination of writing tools and office skills. And that's great. I'm sure that can save people a lot of time. But it also had a more controversial AI feature that was supposed to give feedback on creative writing and journalism to people who were interested in pursuing a career in those fields. And there's nothing particularly controversial in that. The real problem was that their AI tool imitated real writers based on the content that they dredged up on the internet, and including imitations of the author's own voices. So they used content from Stephen King, the astrophysicist and writer Neil deGrasse Tyson, and another scientist, Carl Sagan, who isn't even alive anymore, poor man. But one author whose material and identity they did use without her permission was a business and tech journalist in the US called Julia Angwin, who's pretty well known over there. She's done a lot of stuff for the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And she brought a lawsuit against them. And as a result, Grammarly has removed the tool. So it's not available anymore, but this has been quite a widespread problem. And in fact, since the story broke, the BBC reported that over 40 writers and journalists had contacted them since the lawsuit. So what exactly was the problem here? Well, I think there were two major problems. One was that someone's identity was used and their opinions given as their own without their permission and without them being directly involved in the making of the content. And the second thing was money, because in the end, it all boils down to money. And the fact that Grammarly was charging $12 a month as a subscription fee, and none of the writers and authors were getting a cent for their material. So it's similar to when sampling started in the music industry, and we had the technology to cut in other people's riffs and words into new compositions. And basically, if you're using a riff, credit the original artist and pay them. Otherwise, it's called stealing.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, there's a postscript to this fairly recently, because the UK government had a copyright and AI consultation going on to discuss exactly this type of issue. And they've been lobbied by a whole heap of people from the publishing industry, from AI. And the danger in this is that politicians tend to be dazzled by big tech, not only because they want to see it as part of the future of the country's economy, which is quite right, but they are kind of more dependent on keeping them sweet. And the danger was that they would sacrifice copyright law as a result. But I'm very pleased to say that very recently they've announced they're going to take another look at this. So the creative industries have a reprieve, and well done to them for organising a lobby against this. But it's a reprieve for now, so it's a kind of watch this space to see what develops. But I know I go on about AI a lot, but it is such a big topic in the creative industries at the moment. It's impossible to ignore.
Yeah. And I do wonder how many books that are coming out, not necessarily big epic novels, but shorter books and non-fiction as well, are all written by AI. new authors, not authors that have been publishing for a long time. People thinking, I could publish a book really easily then. I could just write it on AI, chuck it onto Amazon, and there you go.
Well, I know of a startup that was given quite a lot of seed corn funding in the last year, 18 months. That is exactly that. It was more tech based, and some tech guys had set up a company specifically to churn out books that are entirely written by AI, in the hoping, I guess, that if you throw enough mud at a wall, some of it will stick, and it's very, very low cost. You're not paying royalties. If they're putting it all out digitally, they're not paying for print, they're not paying for distribution. So we remain to see whether that model works, but it's certainly becoming more of a factor in the industry.
Yeah. There is a new novel coming out by Bonnie Garmus.
There is. She of Lessons in Chemistry, the great Lessons in Chemistry. So this is a follow-up called Peck and Peck, and it's a slightly odd title, but I'll explain what that means. It's coming out in virtually every language you can think of on the 27th of October, and it's published by Manila Press, who are part of Bonnier Books, part of the big Hachette group. If you're interested in reading it in Spanish, it's coming out through Planeta on the same day as well as English. And as we know, Lessons in Chemistry was about a very strong female character called Elizabeth Zott, who was battling her way through the glass ceiling of the 1960s. So there is a change of scene here, because this one is about a young man. It's set in the present day. And the central character has the rather odd name of Batter Gray, who apparently was named after his mother's dog. And curiously named dogs seem to be a feature of Bonnie Garmus's books, because for those who love their Lessons in Chemistry, the dog in that was called 630. So there is a theme developing here. So who is Batter Gray? He's a young man in his early 20s. He lives in New York City, and he has absolutely no idea what he's going to do for a living. All his classmates at school seem really focused, and they're becoming doctors and lawyers. And what he really wants to be is a poet, which is where the publishing house called Peck and Peck, which is the title of the book, where they come in. And there's an added reason why Batter Gray is searching for this more creative and spiritual life. There is a backstory concerning he had an identical twin brother who died at birth. So that maybe is influencing his more sort of sensitive side in his search for meaning through poetry. So that's the setup, which begs the question, why is Bonnie Garmus writing about poetry? And she has been quoted as saying, at a time when AI threatens to bury the creative industry, there's AI again, going into the arts seems especially risky. But the truth is, we need the arts and artists more than ever. Peck and Peck is all about the unsung heroes who create, who originate, and who think. But if it's half as big as Lessons in Chemistry, it will be huge, and it will certainly be one of the major fiction releases of the autumn.
Yeah, exciting. And no doubt made into a film, possibly.
Oh, I'm sure the film rights have already been sold.
Yeah. And this, I'm incredibly excited about her. She's literally one of my favourite people on the planet. An autobiography from Dame Judi Dench.
Yes, you and millions of others, Hannah, will be excited by this. It's coming out 5 days before Bonnie Garmus. So this will be on the 22nd of October. So it could be an expensive time for a lot of people. This one is Penguin Random House, coming out on the Michael Joseph imprint, and it's called Is It Too Late to Make a Run for It? And it's been described by the publisher as over 90 years in the making, because, of course, Judi Dench is 91 years young. And in case you're thinking, didn't she do a book a few years ago? She did, which was called Shakespeare, the Man Who Pays the Rent. But that was specifically a book about Shakespeare himself and how to master the technique of acting in his plays. And of course, no one knows more about that than she does. But what it wasn't is a memoir, which is where this comes in. There is a connection between the two, because this one, like the Shakespeare book, is a collaboration with her friend and writing partner, who's a man called Brendan O'Hay, who's chatted with her, who's interviewed her for hours about her life. But for a woman who failed to be cast as Mary in her school nativity play, she bounced back pretty well after that. She talks about her acting roles, and she has amazing versatility, from playing heavy Shakespearean roles to playing M in the Bond films. She talks about her personal issues, like coping with stage fright, which apparently she suffered from quite badly. But apparently she is also a great mischief maker and practical joker on stage and on film sets. So she talks about that as well. But it made me do a bit more research about her life. And honestly, the awards that she's got are incredible. She's got an Oscar, a Tony, 2 Golden Globes, 6 BAFTAs, and 7 Oliviers. And I haven't even mentioned them all. And she made her professional debut at the Old Vic in 1957. So what a career and what a life. You know, this is going to be one that's really worth reading. Yeah.
I remember I think she went into the Guinness Book of World Records for when she won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for Shakespeare in Love, because she was only in the film for 8 minutes, I think, which was the shortest ever time that somebody won an Oscar for Best Actress.
Do you know, I think it says something about her presence that, obviously, I remember the film. I remember her playing Queen Elizabeth I. And I have a memory of her being far more dominant in that film, which kind of makes you realise that when she's in it, you're noticing.
Definitely. Excited for that. I've just actually downloaded Liza Minnelli's memoir, so I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that.
It's got some terrific reviews as well, and it sounds so fascinating. And apparently she doesn't hold back in her opinions about her former husbands.
Yes, exciting.
Well, indeed.
And also just to mention, oh no, we haven't got time, have we? No, we'll leave it there.
Okay.
Brilliant.
I'll leave Iain Rankin for next time.
Yes, perfect. Guy Lloyd, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to chat with you, International Sales Manager for Penguin Random House. And of course, as always, if people want to see what books are coming out with Penguin Random House, or find out about how they submit a book, all the instructions and all the information is on the website.
Yes, it is, which is particularly relevant because we came in on this segment about how you submit a book. So, go to the website and there's more advice there.
Perfect. Thank you, Guy.
Thanks very much, Hannah. Talk again next month.
The Book Show with Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Carol Reid. She's a British English language teaching expert and an author and educational consultant. With over 30 years of experience, she's an award-winning writer who has now delved into the work of fiction with Something is Stuck in My Tummy. It's a beautifully illustrated book for children aged 4 to 8 and tells the story of Shelley, who has something stuck in her tummy. Welcome to the Book Show, Carol.
Thank you, Hannah. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Pleasure. Great to have you with us. And how lovely to have this book out now. So how does this differ from all the other writing you've done?
Well, that's a fantastic question. And there are lots of similarities, but also lots of differences as well. Because my main story writing career has been for English language textbooks, graded readers, sessions for children or in teacher education sessions. And of course, that's very, very different from writing a picture book. Picture books are, for a start, they're not constrained by a language syllabus. So although there is some grading, you're not restricted in the same way that you are. I mean, I can remember early on in my career with some of my stories, being told that the target language must appear 3 times, the vocabulary needs to be repeated 3 times. So you don't have any of those restrictions with writing a picture book. But I think the key thing with the picture book is the absolute integration and interdependence of the text and the illustrations. That a picture book is actually, and people have called it this, it's a work of art where both those modalities, both the visual and the textual, work together to construct meaning. And of course, the other thing that you get with a picture book that you don't get when you're writing course books for children is the page turn factor. And this is something that's really important in a picture book. And as a writer, you have to think about every page and what's coming, what's going to be the surprise, what can the children predict, what's going to happen on the next page. So I think that's a really important difference as well. There are many things that got me into this. And I suppose one of the main things is that in my own teaching, and I have been a teacher for many, many years, I've always used picture books in the classroom because I think my own teaching of very young children coincided when I had my own children. And I realised through reading them stories at home how engaged, how interested, how curious, how picture books were a springboard to learning about the world. And that just inspired me to use them with my own classes of young children who were learning English. And of course, what you find with young children, because they don't learn languages in the same way as adults, that as long as the meaning is accessible, it doesn't actually matter whether the language is reflecting their language syllabus or not. So that was one of the important things about starting to write picture books. The other thing was that I realised, well, actually it's been happening over the last 20 years, I would say, that there has been an increasing trend for teachers to use what get called authentic picture books, authentic in the sense that they're originally written for children in an English-speaking context. And those are being increasingly used in classrooms. And although a lot of them are suitable, the kind of classics, The Hungry Caterpillar, Dear Zoo, ones like that, but there are also an awful lot that are not accessible to young children learning English. And I felt that my kind of stage of career, if you like, I really wanted to take my story writing skills that I'd built up over years in a new direction and apply them to writing picture books. And actually during the pandemic, it's funny, isn't it, how sometimes the pandemic, there were a few good things about it. And for me, one of the good things was that I actually, during the pandemic, people supplying courses started offering them online instead of face-to-face. And so I actually did 2 courses in writing picture books for children. And the second one was a more advanced course, more workshopy, where everyone submitted their work and got feedback. And so that was a lovely context for developing my skills. And then I've been lucky enough to be put in touch with Iain, and they took up the book and have published it. It's been a learning journey for me and actually took several years. But now that I'm doing that, I've got another in the pipeline and several others going on in my head that I'm also writing.
Great. So where did you get the idea from for this book? Tell us a little bit about what it's about.
Well, it's about the environment, and it's particularly about plastics pollution and looking after our planet. And in fact, the idea came, I'm a teacher educator and I've worked helping teachers use stories in their classes for many years. And I was invited to do a webinar on sustainability, focusing on young children. And I didn't have a kind of suitable story, so I got these finger puppets of creatures in the ocean. And I kind of made up this very simple story, which was borrowing from the classic traditional story, The Enormous Turnip. And you can still see evidence of that in the final picture book. And so I did it on my screen with these finger puppets and this poor shark who'd swallowed plastic in the sea, and the other sea creatures were helping to bring it out. And at the end, I had a whole load of plastic on my desk. And at that time, the story didn't actually have an ending as such, but I used it to lead in to a STEM project, so science, technology, engineering and maths with the children, whereby they built Lego boxes, obviously not to scale, but that the fish could put all the plastic in under the sea. And anyway, after I'd done that webinar, I had emails from lots of teachers saying, Carol, we really like that story. Where can we get it? And so when I came to doing the course, I thought, actually, I'm going to build on that story. And something I wanted to experiment with as well was writing a rhyming story. Obviously, on our picture book course, one of the children's writers that came up was Julia Donaldson and her kind of rhyming stories. So I wanted to also try my hand at doing a writing story. And one of the things I felt about the environment and environmental issues, quite often you see in stories reflected a kind of a moralistic, do this is what we must all do to save the planet. And actually I feel, working with young children, that when children get told, you must do this, you must do that, you must turn off the tap, switch off the light, whatever it is, actually the defences go up. They don't particularly want to be told what to do. My aim with this story was actually to get children thinking about the issues. And there is no resolution in the story. It leaves it open. What do the people on the fishing boat do with all that plastic that the fish have collected? What are they likely to do? Do they just throw it back in the sea? Or do they actually start? And something like the issue of plastics resonates with children because it's very close to their own reality at home. They know about recycling at home. They know about things that they buy in the supermarket with their parents or carers that come in plastic. They know how much plastic waste accumulates in just a family of 4 in a week. And so it's something that they also can have agency about and be active about in the way that Shelley, the shark, is in the story.
Definitely. Yes, it's getting them aware of these things from a young age, and that impact can stay with you throughout your life. I remember distinctly from a class at school being showed an image of a seagull that had a piece of plastic, the ring pull round its neck when you get like 6 cans together and it's all tied together by plastic. If you don't rip the plastic or cut the plastic before you throw it away, then those round rings can get caught round birds' necks. And I remember seeing that image and thought, good gosh, that's awful. And every single time I rip it apart. And I think of that class every time I rip it apart and the image of that seagull. So yeah, it absolutely works.
No, that's amazing. That's a very, very powerful image, actually, because there is one of those plastic rings in the sea in this story. And I never actually thought, I think I'm going to be cutting the plastic every time now.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So has it made you want to write more stories like this?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely, definitely. I mean, I already have written loads of stories, and I can see now, looking back, that some of the stories I wrote for the course books were also hugely influenced by picture book narratives and how they're constructed, narratives with a repetitive pattern so that children join in, narratives with a little rhyming chorus, narratives that are cumulative, so you get one animal after the other. But I think one of the things with the way Shelley, the shark, has been received, one of the things that I do feel quite inspired about is to keep on writing about environmental issues and trying to make in a way that is appealing and memorable to young children and that they can relate to without feeling that they're being patronised and condescended and told what to do. Because one of the things, with stories in general, that, it's that, what's his name, Bettelheim. He has this book analysing fairy tales, and it's kind of Freudian analysis, but that's not the point of what I'm going to say. One of the things he says in that book is that as adults working with literature or stories with children, we mustn't do the explaining for them, because when we explain for them, that kind of kills it. They don't discover it for themselves, and they don't have ownership of the knowledge. And I think I love your example, actually, of the plastic rings and the seagull. That's the kind of way I want to do stories, to make them memorable, those issues memorable.
Well, if people want to get a copy of Something is Stuck in My Tummy, it's out now. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Carol Reed, who we've been chatting with. We must give a shout out to Giselle Anderson, who I assume is your illustrator.
Giselle has done an absolutely fantastic job. And for me, it's been such a learning experience to work with such a talented and professional illustrator. And together, as we were constructing and designing the pages, it was just fabulous to work with Giselle. And one of the things I love between you have an author and an illustrator, and there's a kind of creative gap. Because obviously in my head, I imagine what the story is going to be like, but I don't have Giselle's talents to be able to realise that myself. And Giselle has her own creative interpretation of the story. And that kind of area where those two creative interpretations meet, if you like, is what makes the magic happen with the book. And I can remember all kinds of creative details. For example, when the octopus is pulling all the plastic out of the shark's tummy, one of the items is a flip-flop. And I just, I hadn't thought of a flip-flop. And I just thought, actually, that is just so brilliant. I love it. And one of the things you can do with children with the plastic on that double spread is identify all the different things there are that are plastic that get sort of thrown into the sea.
Yes. And it's good for children to understand the implications of when they're throwing away rubbish, where they throw it, where it ends up, if you chuck it out the window or you leave it on the beach and all this kind of thing to see, it's not nice to see these animals in pain and ending up eating plastic and having plastic stuck in their tummies. And we can do something about that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it's quite nice that the shark is an animal that is traditionally kind of fierce and frightening and dangerous for all of us. It is true in real life. But in this story, this shark is equally vulnerable to the awful things that we're doing to our planet.
Yeah. Well, as I say, Something is Stuck in My Tummy by Carol Reed is available on our website in the bookshop section. Carol, thank you so much for joining us.
It's been lovely to talk to you, Hannah, about this. Thank you very much for inviting me.
TRE Talk Radio Europe.
There's a pawn shop on a corner
in downtown Fuengirola. Ah, but it's much more than a pawn shop. Did you know it's a registered gold-buying bullion shop? Top London prices are guaranteed. It's also an Aladdin's cave of new and nearly new white gold and platinum diamond jewellery. There are rings there between 1,000 and 2,000 euros with up to 3 carats of diamonds. It's a third and less of high street prices. There's also a large range of Art Deco figures, good quality watches, silver items, paintings, bronzes, glass, china. We're on the main road that runs right through Fuengirola. Give us a call on 952 588 795.
Anthony's Diamonds and Pawnbrokers, a name you can trust.
Abigate, the English insurance broker looking after your health cover needs in Spain. As well as speaking your language, we work with health insurance companies like DKV, Asisa, Casa, Helvetia, and many more. This means that at Abigate, we're able to offer the very best cover for you and your loved ones. Get a no-obligation quote today at abigateinsure.com. Call us on 951 277 455. 951 277 455. Abigate, the way insurance should be.
At Quiron Salud Marbella Hospital, we believe that true beauty starts from within. That's why our microbiota and longevity unit offers fully personalised treatments with a multidisciplinary approach, combining genetic analysis, biomarkers and micronutrients to achieve results that are longer-lasting, natural and uniquely tailored to you. All with the safety and peace of mind of a hospital environment. To find out more, call 952 774 200. Quiron Salud. Health, person to person.
In a world where medical breakthroughs meet everyday realities, we bring you voices that cut through the noise.
What happens to a lot of people when they try to come off of their medications, they stop them too fast, not realizing it. They feel horrible, and then they're told, oh, see, you're having a relapse of your illness. This is why you need to be on meds. And people get stuck in this loop.
Sometimes these voices expose how everyday choices can shape our body's future.
Because alcohol itself is a neurotoxin, and therefore the effects of too much alcohol leads to a condition called Wernicke's encephalopathy, which is an alcohol-induced dementia, basically, which is partly vascular.
Join me, Selena Mackenzie, on our medical special on The Lifestyle Show, Thursdays from 2 p.m. here on TRE, where you can get a glance of the truth behind your health.
The Book Show on TRE is sponsored by CK La Quinta, a residency care home for the elderly like no other in Marbella. Find out more at cklaquinta.com.
You are listening to The Book Show with Hannah Murray on TRE.
Joining us on the line now is Erik S. Meyers. He's currently in Vienna and has been an American abroad for years, lived or worked in 6 countries on 3 continents, the longest in Germany. He's an award-winning author and communications professional with 25 years of expertise in a variety of corporate roles. As well as writing the Sally Witherspoon mystery series, he's also the author of a historical novel, a business book, a short story anthology, and a horror script that was a semi-finalist at the 2024 LA Crime and Horror Film Festival. He's with us on the Book Show to talk about his latest novel, Death for Sale. It's the 3rd book in the Sally Witherspoon series. Sally is a local biker bar owner and part-time investigator. Welcome to the Book Show, Erik.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
It's great to have you with us. So tell us how you came up with the idea of Sally Witherspoon and who is she?
I always loved reading mysteries. And at the beginning of the pandemic, as many people, I had a bit of time on my hands. So I decided to write my own series. And I always planned it as a series, mainly because I knew that was probably the best way to sell it rather than as a one-off. And I always wanted Sally to be a bit different. So a lot of the wonderful cozy crimes these days are, say, 25 to 35-year-old people who are running a candle company or a bakery. And I wanted Sally to be a bit different. So she's mid to late 50s. She left her financial life in Atlanta and moved to a small town in the Arkansas Ozarks and decided to start a biker bar, which she had no experience with. And she, of course, finds crime even in the small town.
Yes. And why a biker bar?
The bar part, I guess the town that Sally lives in is based on a town that I had been to. And I had stumbled upon a bar, but it was more in a hotel bar. And I kind of had that idea there, but I wanted it to be really quirky. So I thought she doesn't just run a bar, it's a biker bar. Yeah. And she left her life as a financial analyst and somehow stumbled into this life. Yeah.
And how does she become an amateur sleuth?
In the first book, at the beginning of the first book, she finds a body behind her bar in the dumpster. And she has been helping people in town before, finding things, not solving mysteries. And she feels it's very close to home because it's actually it's a friend of hers who she finds, and it's in her bar, behind her bar. So she wants to jump in and solve the crime. And she discovers that she really likes that as a side hustle.
Okay. And in this new book, Death for Sale, her 60th birthday is coming up and her aging parents decide to pay her a visit.
Yeah, the whole book around Death for Sale is there. It's the holiday time, and people get ill at the Thanksgiving dinner, and then there's other deaths to follow, and it tends to be older people, which makes her think of her aging, and her parents as well. Who she's originally from Savannah, Georgia, and they moved to Oklahoma, not far from where she is, to be closer to her. And I always try to. I mean, the books are about solving the mystery, but I always enjoy learning a bit about the people, the characters more, their personal lives. So this one is about aging, her aging. She'll be 60, her aging parents, and just thinking about life in general.
Yeah. And tell us about the setting, a place called Berry Springs.
It's, as I mentioned before, it's based on a real town in the Arkansas Ozarks, which is in northwestern Arkansas. I had visited there. It's a very quirky town. With craft shops, and I mean, almost as you would expect that kind of a town to be, with craft shops and some bed and breakfasts. And when I was thinking about where Sally would live, I mean, I love small town mysteries. I love small towns, and I had really had a very interesting and enjoyable experience there. So I wanted to base where she lives on this town. I did not go to a biker bar there, but that's what you.
And you mentioned a Thanksgiving dinner. That's where it all starts to go wrong, when somebody's poisoned.
Exactly. The theme was the books are maybe 6 to 8 months apart. So it's obviously, otherwise there would be a murder every week. And it's holiday time, and I decided to start it with Thanksgiving, where I mean, a lot of the town and much of the county comes together for the annual Thanksgiving dinner, and some people are poisoned, which at first people think is food poisoning. Of course, it's not. And then that starts off a very, unusual, I would say, or sad holiday time where more people die. And Sally's even more determined to solve it, also because it's the holiday time and it's kind of ruined it for many people.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the juxtaposition too of many people look forward to the holidays, and then this happens. So,
and because she's an amateur sleuth, did you need to look into police procedures and things like that and find out how and what she would do in this sort of situation, or does that not come into play really?
It's more. I would say it's a cozy crime, although I know some readers have said it's not that cozy. But I didn't want to do a police procedural. I mean, there are wonderful ones, but I mean, she's an amateur sleuth, so she's not a police officer or a detective. She does work, of course, with the local authorities. I try to keep that light, so obviously I don't want to make too many mistakes about procedure, but I also don't go into much detail about that because it's more about her solving as an amateur detective.
Yeah. And what makes a crime novel cozy, would you say?
I mean, one thing is, which I try to do, is that there's no really detailed, gory scenes. So yes, there are corpses, but you don't get the details of, say, blood or in some books you actually read about the actual crime being committed. So I keep that out. And people, there are corpses, obviously, but this is not a really detailed, and somebody's died, but you don't get all the gory details. And I think cozy also, more small town. It's a nicer atmosphere. It's not a huge impersonal city, but everybody knows each other. So you've more like a small town, hometown feeling as well.
And with a mystery, do you need to plot it all beforehand? Do you need to know where the twists and turns are coming in, or do you surprise yourself as you're writing it?
I mean, the way I write, and I know not all mystery writers do this, I mean, I plot it out because I feel also thinking about who's the murderer, who's killed, and also you want to sort of sprinkle clues within the book. So the reader, which I love doing, you follow it and kind of try to solve the crime yourself. I find my personal experience, if you don't plot it out and then you try to sprinkle clues in, it doesn't really quite work because it's obvious sometimes that you've kind of stuck them in afterwards. So it doesn't really fit to the story. But I have to say, I do plot out maybe 3 or 4 options thinking about it. And as I write, I solidify one, but I have a pretty clear idea of what's going on before I start writing.
Okay, that's clever that you give yourself options.
You never know. I mean, when you're writing, you write the book, but sometimes things just pop up or into your mind and the characters kind of take control, quote unquote. So you don't want to limit yourself too much, but you do have kind of a general idea of where it's going, because you do have to have all these clues in between and tie it up at the end for it then to also make sense.
Yeah. And this being the 3rd book in the series, do you advise that people read the first 2 before this book, or are they all very much standalone?
They're more or less standalone, I think, because I also tried to add some information about what's gone on before in the later books. I think you would get the whole story if you read them in the order to understand what's going on, but they're standalone mysteries and you don't necessarily have to have read the others before.
Yeah. And do you know how many there's going to be in the series?
My original book contract was for 3 books. That's been extended to 6. Oh. So currently 6. So I'm finalizing the 4th book, which should be out at the end of the year. I have to send it soon to my publisher.
Great. Exciting. Well, if people want to get a copy of Death for Sale, it's out now. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Erik S. Meyers, who we've been chatting with today. Erik, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
The Book Show, presented by Hannah Murray.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the second part of today's book show. In the first hour, we were chatting with Guy Lloyd, Carol Reed and Erik S. Meyers. In this hour, we're joined by D.N. Potter, who spent 20 years as a newspaper editor before leaving the industry to start his own PR and media consultancy. He took early retirement to focus on his love of creative writing and recently gained a master's degree in crime and thriller writing from Cambridge University. His novel, I, Claudia, is about a middle-aged woman who puts a hit on her cheating husband. We're also chatting to Eleanor Lipman, the author of 15 novels, including Misdemeanor, which was a finalist for the 2023 Thurber Prize for American Humour. Her debut novel, Then She Found Me, was adapted into a film directed by and starring Helen Hunt, with Bette Midler, Colin Firth and Matthew Broderick. Her latest novel, Every Tom, Dick and Harry, has already been optioned for screen adaptation. It's about Emma Lewis, whose parents make her an offer she can't refuse when they move to the coast and invite her to take over their home, as well as the family firm. And finally on today's book show is Eva Le Bon, a retired registered psychotherapist with many years' experience of working imaginatively with children, their families and personal stories. What a Little Star is written in rhyme and beautifully illustrated. It follows an adorable duck family watched over by a fun-loving moon. It explores life's ups and downs in a way that young children can understand and enjoy. It's a story about resilience, creativity and celebrating everyday moments. That's this week's book show on Talk Radio Europe.
The Book Show, presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is D.N. Potter. He spent 20 years as a newspaper editor before leaving the industry to start his own PR and media consultancy. He took early retirement to focus on his love of creative writing and recently gained a master's degree in crime and thriller writing from Cambridge University. He's also a member of the Society of Authors. He's with us on the book show to talk about his new novel, I, Claudia. It's about a middle-aged woman who puts a hit on her cheating husband. Welcome to the book show, Dave.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you with us. So tell us about your background working as a newspaper editor. I'm guessing that helped with writing books.
Yeah, I think that anybody who's worked in journalism will recognise the fact that over the course of time, you meet so many strange people, to be honest, and particularly in the world of things like politics and that. They seem to inhabit that world a lot. So over the course of years, I think you begin to. I'm not saying that you based characters particularly on specific people, but you see traits of behaviour and you see all that sort of thing and the things that they do, and it all accumulates in the back of your mind and in your notebooks. And then when it comes to actually writing stories, you've got this fund of interesting people to call upon.
Yeah, and it must have been fascinating gaining a master's degree in crime and thriller writing at Cambridge. What did that entail? That
was quite possibly one of the best things I've ever done in my life. It was so interesting. Having retired, taken early retirement, I hadn't considered the possibility of doing something like the Masters. What I had done was I'd done a couple of summer courses there and absolutely loved it, got to know one or two of the lecturers, and then they launched this new course in crime and thriller writing. And I thought, that sounds like it's right up my street. It's not quite like creative writing. I think I'd have really struggled with creative writing because that includes poetry and all sorts of things like that, and I'm no good at poetry. But crime and thriller writing, I thought, well, you know what? So I applied and, much to my amazement, got accepted. And as I say, it was one of the most wonderful experiences. It wasn't just the lecturers who were in charge of the course, because we had people like Sophie Hannah, Ellie Griffiths was my personal tutor, who had a wealth of knowledge and experience and could guide you in the rights and wrongs of what you were doing, which was great. But then the other guys and girls on the course, they were spread over a wide age range and from a wide range of backgrounds. And they were fascinating people too. I think that what made it in a weird kind of way was the fact that we'd hardly got going on the course when COVID struck. So that meant for a year, the course was kind of postponed. So we kept in touch with each other over Zoom, and as you did then. And it kind of built a camaraderie amongst us, so that when we actually got to resume the course after a year, and we went back to Cambridge for the first time, and we had a week together, it was such a relief, such a joy to see people again. If people remember what it was like to come out of quarantine, as it were. So that was such a wonderful experience to get back with people again. And it was on that course where the genesis of I, Claudia was born, because we had a workshop session during that resumption course, and we had an opportunity just to write some stuff, and nothing too grand. It wasn't supposed to be part of a book or any part of the coursework or anything like that. It was just a chance to express ourselves. And so there was just this feeling of joy at being back together again. And I don't know what came over me, but I just wrote this piece that later became the first chapter of I, Claudia, and just thought, I'll take a risk here. It's fun. We're all back together again. Who cares? And much to my amazement, people actually liked it. And they said, this is great. You must try and develop this. Have you thought about developing this into a novel or anything? Which I hadn't at that point. But then, yes, of course, I went away and thought about it and thought, you know what? Dare I do this? Because it's not something I'd done before. So that's how it all started.
Yeah. And what made you choose the crime and thriller writing course? Had you always thought that was the kind of writing you wanted to produce?
Yeah, I thought that well, yes, definitely. I mean, I was writing in that genre anyway, or tending to write in that genre. So it seemed like a natural thing to do. Again, I think it's part of the newspaper background because you cover so much in the way on a local newspaper, particularly. There's so much of it is about, local crime, the courts and all that sort of thing. So it just seemed a natural thing to do. Yeah. So I just had that interest in crime. And then when they offered this course of crime and thriller, I just couldn't believe it. I thought, you know what? This is right up my street.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about your main character, Claudia.
Well, I'd like to say that Claudia's based on a particular individual, but she's not. I mean, obviously, you'd hate to meet somebody like that, wouldn't you? Really? She's a composite character, as I say, partly based on one or two people. In fact, I'm not going to mention names, but I can imagine one particular politician, female politician, that when I left newspapers, I had a period working in local government as a communications officer. And we had one particular politician who was a nightmare to try and work with. So some of it is based on her, but the rest of it is also, keeping your ears open and to some of the things that my wife would say to her friends and what her friends would say to her. I think, oh my word. And then you just sort of expand on it a little bit and exaggerate. And so that's where she... And I wanted to make her... I didn't want to make her a dislikable character. I wanted to make her, in essence, a bit of a likable character. So she is paranoid and she has bumped off people, getting away from that. But she also has her good points. If a mass murderer can have their good points, then Claudia has her good points. And I try to exaggerate them and bring them out in the book, yeah.
Yeah. So what is she actually like as a person then? You say she's not unlikable. So do we like her? Are we rooting for her?
Well, I hope so. What she focuses on with her dislike, actually, is people who have let her down, who have broken their word, who have acted in a way that's disreputable or dishonourable. So in a way, she sees herself as a bit of a seeker after justice. So if somebody behaves badly, then they deserve to be punished for it. It's just that her way of punishing is perhaps a little bit extreme. But yes, and she has a very soft spot for animals and children. So she volunteers and does charity work for children's stuff and also for animals and yeah. So she's not completely a wholly bad person.
Yeah, so funnily, knowing about her charity work and things like that, it would be easy to perceive her as a really nice, kind person.
Well, I hope so, yes. I mean, that's why, that's part of her. So she's not wholly bad. I say she's got these traits. But she's also got, in some ways, she's got a heart of gold, really, and she'll go out of her way to help people and obviously animals and that. It's just that it's a kind of, I said to somebody else, it's revenge, really. Her way of looking at it is she's seeking revenge. And in a way, I think that touches a nerve with a lot of people, because haven't we all sat there sometimes and thought, you know what, I hope so-and-so gets their just desserts for behaving like that. And so she plugs into that, and she that is her, really. She takes that to the nth. So she's very much a seeker after justice and wants revenge for people who behave badly. And as I say, I think there's that element in all of us, really. She just goes that bit too far, really.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because on the outset, you'd think, well, how could we ever possibly be on the side of a serial killer or someone who's hiring hitmen? But I mean, it's happened before, hasn't it? In fiction, we like these characters and we understand that they're doing it for the right reasons and we get behind them.
Well, yeah, and there's an element of sort of wishing that you had the courage sometimes. I mean, some of the things that people do to, I mean, it's not that they're just casually nasty to her. I mean, they do some horrible things. So she feels justified in actually doing some horrible things back. You know, you deserve. And I think, as I say, there is that element in a lot of us that we also feel that way, but we feel restrained and constrained by the society in which we live, that you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that.
No.
You either put up and shut up or you tell the police or somebody and then nothing happens. So, she wants something to happen, so she's going to make it happen.
Yeah. There's a fascinating connection between you and your family history where your interest in crime writing sort of came from. Can you tell us about that? Because it's a fabulous story.
Yeah. I mean, this goes back about 25 years to when the internet became so popular, and obviously family research became one of the big things, didn't it? And so I started researching, together with my sister, we started researching our own family because we knew very little about it. My dad knew very little, and he'd just have vague stories about his grandparents, but he didn't know much. In fact, he got names wrong. So initially, when we tried to do research, we were just off on a complete tangent because we got the wrong surnames, we got the wrong places in the country. And then when we stumbled on the truth, we found out that he was telling us this false information because actually his parents had told him false information and hadn't talked about his ancestors simply because my great grandfather, it turned out, had been involved in this great scandal where he was a member. He was a son of the aristocracy, and his family was very well connected. He had various members of his family who were in the government of the day. A couple of them were earls and lords and all sorts of things. So, and he grew up very entitled and he was very clever, but he always wanted to take a shortcut to wealth. And he started getting involved in some one or two little fraudulent schemes, and then they snowballed. And eventually he got to know this young man, a 20-year-old called Cecil Hambro, who was the heir to the Hambro banking fortune. And he became very much a mentor to Cecil. And what his idea was, he wanted to help Cecil get his hands on his inheritance early because Cecil's father, Major Hambro, was a spendthrift and there was a risk that it would all be frittered away. So he was trying to help Cecil. In the course of which they hired this estate, the Ardlamont estate in Scotland, a shooting estate. They went up there for the summer, and during the course of this trip, they went shooting one morning, and a shot rang out, and the next thing anybody know, young Cecil was dead. So there was this big unknown about who was carrying which shotgun and how was did Cecil shoot himself or did my great grandfather shoot him? And it ended up in the High Court in Edinburgh in a murder trial, and it was dubbed the trial of the century at the time. And at the end of it all, he was and one of the witnesses for the prosecution turned out to be one of the guys who Conan Doyle based the character of Sherlock Holmes on. But anyway, that's a side point. Yeah, that was just an interesting little side point. But at the end of the trial, he was found, because he was in Scotland, and you still have a separate system in Scotland to England and Wales, and it's still a form of contention up there, and they're still trying to change it because they have guilty, not guilty, and then they have a verdict that lies in between called not proven. And so the jury decided after only half an hour, which was unheard of, really, to be come up with a verdict that quickly, that the case against him was not proven. Well, it's not the same as being found not guilty.
No.
And in Victorian society, particularly with his background, he was an outcast in society after that. And nobody wanted to know him because there was, there's no smoke without fire sort of thing.
Yeah.
So he was ostracized very much, which was a shame. He had 7 kids and his marriage broke up. Madame Tussauds made a wax effigy of him and put that outside the Chamber of Horrors.
Oh, gosh.
So he ended up suing Madame Tussauds for libel. I'm basically saying, you've put my effigy in front of the Chamber of Horrors. You're basically saying I was guilty.
Mm.
So after a trial, he was proved right, and Madame Tussauds were found guilty. However, he was only given a farthing damages. Because the judge said, basically, your character and your reputation is so shot that you're not worth anything more. So that just made matters worse, really. I mean, far from being the vindication that he hoped it would be, it actually made just matters far worse. And he ended up going into a life of crime then, and he was jailed in the late 1890s for fraud. He went to Parkhurst. He was released from Parkhurst early on the basis that he emigrated to South Africa under an assumed name, which is what he did. But unfortunately, what we've never, ever been able to find out, we know where he went in South Africa for a while, but we don't know what name he used. So we don't know what happened to him, whether we had another family or what. He just disappeared into the pages of history.
Wow. And have you not thought about writing a book about him? This sounds like a great book.
Well, I have. But unfortunately, my agent can't find a publisher.
Oh, no.
So if this broadcast hits somewhere with a publisher who thinks that might be an interesting story, hey, get in touch because the book's waiting.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, it sounds great. Well, in the meantime, if listeners want to get a copy of I, Claudia, it's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by D.N. Potter, who we've been chatting with today. Dave, thanks so much for joining us.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The Book Show with Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Eleanor Lippman. She's the author of 15 novels, including Misdemeanor, which was a finalist for the 2023 Thurber Prize for American Humor. Her debut, Then She Found Me, was adapted into a film directed by and starring Helen Hunt, with Bette Midler, Colin Firth and Matthew Broderick. She's back with us on the Book Show to talk about her latest novel, Every Tom, Dick and Harry, which is about Emma Lewis, whose parents make an offer she can't refuse when they move to the coast and invite her to take over their home as well as their family firm. Welcome to the Book Show, Eleanor.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Oh, it's lovely to have you with us again. So you've been busy.
Yes, I have. The paperback came out in the States and in England at the same time. So I'm happy to be talking about it, as we authors should do.
Absolutely. So tell us about the background and inspiration for this book, can you?
Yes, Emma, and that was an excellent little summary. I'm going to adopt that. Emma is a little footloose at this time. She's just turning 32. And, she's just had a few retail jobs out of town. And her parents are very sensitive to this. And, well, as you said, they hand her the reins of their estate sale business. But you asked me about the background. I'm not a compulsive estate sale, jumble sale attendee. But on weekends, if I get an email about an estate sale and it's probably at a nice house and not a yard sale with a lot of, plastic tricycles, then I go to that. And somewhere along the line, I was at a house and I just kept sort of identifying in some ways, whether it was the cookbook or the mugs or some plates that I thought were the same taste. And so it planted this idea in my head, which I later had to throw out. But the idea was, somebody who goes to estate sales might find something, who knows, a book with some, dedication in it. Anyway, but then I thought, no, because that sounds like it's going to be sort of a 23andMe story about a long lost somebody. So I said, no, I think I'll flip it and I will give Emma Lewis at 32, this business. She's been sort of, taking change and wrapping old vases since she could do math. And yet, not a great enthusiast, but she's given the house. They moved to Cape Cod. We found out later, a little reluctantly. And then, so Emma has to dig up business.
So just explain what an estate sale is and what the business would entail, because I don't think we have things like that here.
Oh, well, an estate sale usually is, often it is when parents die and maybe grandparents, and there's this whole house with all of its belongings. And then first the children and grandchildren come in and say what they want to keep. And then they hire someone whose business is sell the rest of his stuff.
Wow.
And I mean, we're talking about, like I have from an estate sale from the famous opera singer Beverly Sills. I have her egg slicer, that little wire thing. I have some wooden napkin rings. I have a little sort of iron cow door stop that doesn't actually hold the door closed, but, I admire it. And, so there's all these little reminders, and she has to dig up business, and the sort of big plot turn in the book is that somebody recommends a fancy house on the nicest street in a college town in Massachusetts. Massachusetts, all of our towns and cities are named after British towns and cities. And in real life, this is Northampton. And I give it the name Harrow, which goes back a couple of books. I look at the names of English places and things to name my Massachusetts fictional towns. Everton is another town on Turpentine Lane. Mm-hmm. Anyway, biggest house. She calls the owner, and one thing leads to another. She does get the job, but this is a bed and breakfast, not Airbnb, but a bed and breakfast in this grand house. And it comes to pass, and this isn't a great reveal, she finds out very early that it had double duty as a brothel.
Oh.
Yes.
So that impacts the story, I'm guessing.
Well, it does, because, when Emma finds this out, it just, it has a ripple effect. Like, who knew? Did her very parents know this? Was it a well-known fact that they kept from the children? Were high school girls recruited? Like, what horrible things went on? But my books are considered funny. And so we've got the good cop, Luke, who Emma went to high school with. And then there's the bent cop. We don't use that phrase so much in the States, but I binge on British police procedurals. Mm-hmm. So I know about bent cops by, that word anyway, that adjective. So we've got the bent cop who was married to the owner. In other words, she calls herself the house mother of this brothel.
Okay. So where does the title come from? Every Tom, Dick and Harry?
It's actually a phrase. The adult daughter of the madam is just this sort of very businesslike woman. And she just one day she's telling Emma about, how do you know that Emma asks, how do you know the difference when someone's calling to book a room versus someone who wants to meet a woman? And she said something about, we can tell by what they ask. And, if someone calls up and they ask about, air conditioning or, access by a wheelchair, we know what they want. And then she throws out, we don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry. So I thought, every Tom, Dick, and Harry. I wonder if that could be the title. And then I try it out on some, principal critics and friends. And so that stuck.
Yeah, it works. So am I right in saying that this has already been optioned for screen adaptation?
It was, in fact, right before, sort of the week before it was published. So that was very nice. And it's lovely. And the people talk about, possibly they have a great eye for British directors. And so I think that would be a completely wonderful thing. And they seem to think that the sensibility would fit a British director or any director.
Yeah, exciting. So, these things, you never know how long they're going to take, but it sounds like they're in progress at least, which is great.
Yes, they are. I think things are being, they really prefer, if I just say that, it's optioned for development for either, screen or series. Yeah. I'd be happy with both.
Yeah.
Speaking about a long time, my first book that you mentioned, Then She Found Me, that was made into a movie, it was optioned a year before that book, Then She Found Me, came out. And by the time, it took 18 years for it to hit the screen. Yep.
Wow. Gosh. And were you involved in any of that, or did you literally have to hand everything over?
I was prepared to hand everything over. I did have dinner with Helen Hunt at her house in Los Angeles, and she cooked me dinner, very nice chicken dip. And just the two of us. And we had the laptop on the table because she was waiting to hear whether Bette Midler or not would accept the role. And she did, not that night. And I did get to read the screenplay, and I only had one correction, and they were very obliging about that, because it opens with a Jewish wedding, and Helen Hunt had been adopted by Holocaust survivors. This time-wise, it worked when the book came out in 1990. But the problem was that the groom, played by Matthew Broderick, was named Christopher. So I said, probably not. If they're religious enough to get married under huppah, probably not Christopher. So she said, well, what name? And I said, well, Ben would be good. That's my son's name.
Nice. And she took your advice, obviously.
She did. And then I met Matthew. Well, I went. I was invited to the premiere, and I met Matthew Broderick, and just about everybody. Not Colin Firth, though. He wasn't there. This was in New York. Yeah.
What a shame. Lovely to meet the others, though. Well, if people want to get a copy of Every Tom, Dick and Harry, it's out now. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Eleanor Lipman, who we've been chatting with today. Eleanor, thanks so much for joining us again.
Oh, you're so welcome. My pleasure.
You're listening to The Book Show with Hannah Murray on TRE.
Talk Radio Europe. If you need a loan, there's no need to moan. Get on the phone and speak to Tone. Who you gonna call? Pawnbrokers, Anthony's. No better time, no better place, and no better price. Call Anthony on 609-529-633.
Anthony's, now in Fuengirola and Puerto Banús.
Moving to Spain is the dream, but the paperwork, the language, trying to sort anything out. Some days it just feels impossible. Then I get home and everything just works. Wi-Fi, my phone, calling people whenever I want, and it's all in English. That's why I chose Lobster.
Ultra-fast fibre from just €19.99 a month. Add mobile for just €7.99 with free calls and roaming in the UK. Call 1661 now or visit lobster.es today. Life's better with Lobster.
L&T.
On the director's cut.
Here you go, more negative waves. Have a little faith, baby.
You mind if I have some of your tasty beverage to wash down?
I delve deeper and deeper into the archives.
Girls look guys who are dangerous, have tattoos, play the guitar. Stick with me. I know these things.
From jazz to big band, from punk to rock, to obscure collections to surprise you each week.
Don't buy drugs. Become a pop star and they give you them for free.
Friday at 6 p.m. with a repeat on Sunday at 1 on Catch Up and the TRE Jukebox.
The Director's Cut.
With L&T. 1, 2, 3. Yippee. Yay.
There's still so much to accomplish.
The book show on TRE is sponsored by CK La Quinta, a residency care home for the elderly like no other in Marbella. Find out more at cklaquinta.com.
You're listening to Hannah Murray on The Book Show.
Joining us on the line now is Eva Le Bon. She's a retired registered psychotherapist with many years' experience of working imaginatively with children, their families and personal stories. She's worked mostly within hospital settings, in child and adolescent psychiatry and on paediatric wards. She's with us on the book show to talk about her book, What a Little Star. Written in rhyme and beautifully illustrated, it follows an adorable duck family watched over by a fun-loving moon. It explores life's ups and downs in a way that young children can understand and enjoy. It's a joyful story about resilience, creativity, and celebrating everyday moments. Welcome to the book show, Eva.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. So tell us a little bit about your background and how and why you came to write this book.
Okay. So, well, my working background is as you described. My growing up was full of lots and lots of creative opportunities. My father was a doctor, so we lived over the surgeries. So there were so many stories that we were surrounded by, and life was always very busy, and there was plenty of music, and had a grandma that told wonderful stories that were the kind that never ended. So that was great. And then I do remember a lot to do with books, like going to the library. I loved doing that. Again, I usually did that with my grandmother. And I remember pushing open the door and the smell of the polish at the time, and the little chairs that little ones sat on, and the books that would just seem to be around your height, or somebody would pull one down for you. So that was something that I really loved, going to the library. And I loved receiving a book for a present. So that was very much sort of like how it was as I was growing up.
So how did you come to write this book?
This particular book. So I'm sure that there were lots and lots of pieces of information and inspiration from both my childhood and from my work. So from my childhood, I think there was definitely a feeling of learning to be resilient, learning when things disappointed you a little bit, that, you know, it was okay really, and that there would be different ways of managing that kind of disappointment. And then with the families that I met, there was always this sprinkling of whatever is out there, anxiety was often one of the things that really came to fore in sessions. And the whole thing about never really being able to reassure anybody particularly well, because none of us know exactly what's going to happen. And that being quite a difficult kind of concept for a little child to grow up with. So I had this idea that Moon is always there. So Moon appears in all my stories, whether it's for grown-ups or for children. And it's the idea that however unpredictable things become for anybody at any one time, look to the moon, and Moon is there. It's the constancy of the moon. And in this story, it's very much a light-hearted Moon who even plays the guitar and sings. So again, it's helping Moon seem approachable for a child. I heard a young doctor recently telling me that they had the book on a paediatric ward and that it was a lovely one for children who came into hospital maybe for the first time, and that they could wave to Moon knowing that the parents were waving to the same moon that particular night. So that was sort of the idea of Moon. And I suppose this whole thing about ducks and waddling along, up and down they go, and having that richness of the good times and times to celebrate and times that are just okay, and waddling, learning to kind of to accept that sometimes there will be a wobbly, wonky moment. It's not all honky-dory.
Yeah, lovely. So tell us a bit more about the duck family and each character.
Oh, well, Splish, Splash and Puddles. So Splish is Daddy Duck, and he wears glasses in the story, and you get the impression that he's a bit of... he loves to sing, but he also loves to do things. So he wears dungarees, and he's a pocket in his dungarees, and you could imagine either his sandwich in there or a hammer and some nails and stuff, because he's always busy doing things. And Mum, Splash, she's lovely too. She very much also likes to do things outside. She gathers wood for the fire. She likes making things from wood. So she's certainly, very keen to do things too. And of course, they've got little puddles. But one thing about Splash is that because she's such a carer in the family in a different kind of way to Splish, she sometimes does get a little bit anxious, a little bit over-concerned about something. And she loves to sing as well, but she likes to imagine that she's almost like an opera singer. But when she gets anxious, she hits all the wrong notes. And in the story, she honks instead of quacks when she becomes anxious. And then Puddles, he's just adorable and very, very much loved. Mischievous, definitely. And yes, he really wants to please so much. So as soon as he's learnt to fly, one of the things he does is brings the tea, because he has this feeling that grown-ups like to chat to friends or quack to friends over a cup of tea. Mm-hmm. And so he thinks, well, if I bring a pot of tea, all will be well. But unfortunately, as the pages turn, he splashes the tea all over the place, and so gets into trouble with that as well. So, so there you are. So that's Splish, Splash and Puddles.
So is the whole book written in rhyme?
Yes, it is.
Lovely.
And there's a lot of rhythm to it. And Moon is very engaging. So Moon has got that longer perspective on everything from being further away. And so, but you also get the feeling of Moon very much being alongside. It's not like up in the sky in a superior kind of way at all. It's like being watchful and being loving towards all the things that Moon sees, and sometimes waddling alongside, wanting to feel what it's like to be in their shoes, their feet, a while. So, yes, Moon opens the doors to lots of new, further ways of thinking about things when they get it.
And it's beautifully illustrated, isn't it? How did you find that, the illustrator?
Oh, well, really, from doing searches on Google and Amazon and just looking at a whole lot of books. And yes, and Gail Yarrell, she is just wonderful. I mean, it is so fascinating as an author, giving words and having little conversations, which we did have many a conversation. We just worked together like a dream. It was lovely. And but then to see her, I don't know if you've seen this little sketch on the internet of her, of Splish being born, as it were. So she's got the outline of Splish and then she's painting him. And it's just like it's sprung from the pages of the book, it's lovely. Just wonderful. Yeah.
Nice. And there's a bit in the book towards the end where people can personalise it with the bright gold star. Yes. Just explain that.
Yeah. Yes. So this is the thing about the story. So a big hallmark of my work, both my writing and the work I've done and just my life being amidst children and family, is that we can't ever really get back to the start of a story, because often the start of a story is the end of another story. So it's always that thing about beginnings. So I'm very interested in the idea of stories within stories. So in this story, What a Little Star, the star is a little child that the person knows who's buying the book or getting the book from the library for that little star. And that little child, little boy, little girl, becomes the star of the story by the time you come to the last few pages, which is a surprise the first time it's read. And later times you can change the message. So on this page, it's a big, bold, golden page with a big star on it. It says, "The Little Star Award is presented to," and then the name of the child is put in, and then a little bit of a message. And the thing about that is it's designed to hopefully, yes, it can be happy birthday, yes, it can be first day at school, it can be well done for winning a race, but it could also be thank you for feeding the birds. I love watching you feed the birds. You have the best smile. Wasn't it fun making that castle from yogurt pots, recycling things? So it's, or it could even be, I think it's wonderful the way you've been in hospital. You've been so brave. So it's a message from the adult to the child. And on that page, there are little spaces here and there for stickers or even a little photograph of the child. There are also some blank pages in the book. So it's just to also encourage the adult to be imaginative and to even be a bit childlike again. And the whole thing about the ducks are they can live anywhere. They live, anywhere at all. So I think it's wonderful reading the story with different accents, so that the book can sound a bit different times when it's being read by the same person. Yeah. And so the whole thing about a parent, they can't be playful necessarily all day long. They've got lots to do. But at night time or at the time of day when the story's being read and they're sitting there, they've switched off from other things, it's their turn to perhaps be a bit more playful, and the child can see that, and enjoy it, really. Yes.
Yeah. Nice. Well, if people want to get a copy of What a Little Star, it's available now on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Eva Le Bon, who we've been chatting with today. Eva, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
The Book Show on TRE is sponsored by CK La Quinta, a residency care home for the elderly like no other in Marbella. Find out more at cklaquinta.com.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit TRE.radio.